Stewart and Young Turks. Do you see this story on the front page of the Daily Telegraph today? Mental health culture has gone too far. Britain's approach to mental health is in danger of having gone too far, with the normal anxieties of life being labelled as illnesses, the Work and Pensions Secretary has warned. Speaking as he unveiled plans to make 150,000 people signed off work with mild conditions look for a job, Mel Stride said that the UK's benefits bill was being pushed up by the problem. Yeah, saying everyday anxiety is not a medical condition. Well, look, we can discuss that with our sound advice guest today, because today's sound advice is, well, all about taking a bit of time out for yourself and recognising that, you know what, sometimes it's okay not to be okay. And that's where therapy or counselling can really help if you find yourself in a bit of a rut or just generally feeling a bit low, a bit unhappy with how things are at the moment. I mean, God knows, there's an awful lot going on in the world that can stress us out, right? What are the different kinds of therapy, though, available, and how can they help? Well, Bridget Walford is the owner of the Eaves Counselling and Psychology service with practices in Guildford, Godalming, Hazelmere and Farnham, and joins us now. A very good morning to you, Bridget.
Good morning.
The thing about counselling and therapy that always strikes me is that we hear a lot, don't we, about looking after our physical health. You know, it's important to exercise, get your steps in, go to the gym. So actually, it makes sense, doesn't it, to maybe get some therapy or some counselling, you know, if you are concerned about your mental health.
Absolutely, it does. I mean, the pressures of modern day living mean that we don't really have the family systems in place that maybe we used to. The pressures of life are very fast-paced, and people don't often have time to just stop and think about what's going on for them and going on in their lives. If they come across a problem that they just can't get round, or an issue that they just can't solve for themselves, sometimes it's really useful to talk to an impartial professional, even just for a few sessions.
Yeah, you're right about the impartial bit, because even if you have got people around, you know, good friends, good family, you don't always want to talk to them about it because I suppose you don't want to burden people, do you?
Well, no, and also you might get conflicting advice. You might get people who get upset if you don't take their advice.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just good to have a sounding board, which is really what the counselling profession is about. It's just sort of being available to listen without judgment, really.
God, that must be hard for you at times, though, isn't it? I'd find that really tricky. There must be moments where you're like, oh, I just want to say what I think.
There's an awful lot more value in helping the client find the answer themselves, because they probably had people giving them advice left, right and centre. So sometimes being able to be guided to find it themselves is much more valuable because it comes from them.
Yeah. Have you noticed an uptake in the number of people coming to you?
Well, at the Eaves, we have over 150 counsellors and psychologists working in our practices.
Wow.
12 hours a day, 6 days a week. So we've got 26 therapy rooms across Surrey. And so the answer would be absolutely resoundingly yes. But it's not to say that mental health issues are on the increase. It's just I think people are more willing to talk about things earlier than perhaps they used to be, and come in for a few sessions rather than when they hit rock bottom and that everything's just fallen to pieces for them.
Yeah. It's tricky though, isn't it? Because you're right, we do hear an awful lot about, you know, it's good to talk. And that's all well and good. But you also hear a lot of people say, well, I have opened up about my mental health. I've said I think there's an issue, but I can't actually access any help. And obviously there are services like yours, but you've got to have money, haven't you? Do you think the NHS should be doing more to help people with this?
The NHS is absolutely full to busting, you know, and we're very aware of that at the Eaves. That's why we offer... We've also got an affordable counselling service. We've got 8 students on play with us, just to try and help people in the local community that can't go on the waiting list. I mean, particularly for children, the waiting list is around 2 years at the moment.
I mean, that's crazy. If you're in crisis, what are you going to be like, you know, 2 years from now?
Exactly. And then the thing is, particularly with young people, is the behaviours become really embedded by that point. So, you know, the faster you can access good quality care, the better. But there are also a lot of charities that will see people for free. But the Eaves our affordable service is actually open-ended, so you could be a year in therapy, and that's we don't put a limit on the amount of sessions that you can have.
Yeah. Oh, it just so annoys me. It's so short-sighted because, like you say, earlier intervention would just be so much more beneficial. If you leave someone in crisis, for a long time, you're just making matters worse, right? It's going to end up costing so much more money down the line. What do you make of these comments by the Work and Pensions Secretary that Britain's approach to mental health is in danger of having, and I quote, gone too far, with the normal anxieties of life being labelled as illnesses?
I think that's a real shame that they would say something like that, considering the amount of money that they're not putting into mental health care to actually take it the other side when people are feeling too unwell to go to work is counterproductive in my eyes. I think that if they were putting money into, as we said, early intervention, I don't think half of the issues that happen in workplaces would come across. Such things like trained mental health first aiders at work and so on. That's so helpful to people to be able to talk to somebody at work without fear of it going on their record or fear of judgment. And I think that would clear the way for people not going off sick. I think it's a shame. It's a bit narrow-minded, really, to say, it's all gone too far and we're going to put a stop to mental health now. It's crazy.
It doesn't quite work like that, does it?
Not
what
really.
Advice do you have for someone who might be listening right now who is actually not feeling great? Do you know what I mean? They are feeling low. What should they do? What's their first port of call?
Well, try and talk to somebody close to you if you can. That's obviously preferable because they know you, they love you, they care for you. If that's not available to you, there are lots of free resources online. Even on our Eaves website ourselves, we've got an absolute vast sort of vault of blogs and advice pages, and on our Instagram twice a week we put advice up. So there is lots of resources out there if you could have a look at reputable businesses and try and just kind of help yourself. If it still fails, then if cost is an issue, try and access a zero cost or low cost alternative. If you have private mental health, or if you can fund yourself a few sessions, then someone like the Eaves, you can be seen within a week. So it's really, try and do what you can for yourself. But if you need to call a mental health professionals, an organisation that's registered with the BACP is really your way to go, and then you know that they're reputable.
Do you think there is still a stigma around mental health?
I'd love to say no, but it really depends. I think much less, and employers I think are doing brilliantly at trying to overcome this. In general, I think maybe companies that have been smaller companies that maybe have been established a while or in certain sectors are still lagging behind in terms of acceptance of mental health issues. But it is changing, but it's not entirely gone yet.
No. And actually, I've got an example of that right here. I've just had a message from Claire. She says, if I'm having a bad day/week, why on earth would I go for therapy? I just say to myself that it will pass, and it does. Why do everyday problems have to be labelled as mental health these days? There are people out there, like Claire, with that opinion.
Absolutely, and she's obviously a robust individual that's got caring people around her, and good for her. I absolutely agree with that. But sometimes it's just too difficult to handle on your own. If you keep coming against the same problems, particularly around relationships, that can just prove so difficult and so debilitating for people that a few sessions can just kind of it can set you back on the right path. I'm not saying you have to be in therapy for years. It's sometimes as simple as just a few sessions, and you know what you're doing now, and then you can do it on your own or with the resources the counsellor's given you.
Bridget, thank you so much. Bridget Walford, owner of the Eaves Counselling and Psychology.